Okay, listen to this. What if I told you that some of the absolute greatest minds in modern science, we're talking J. Robert Oppenheimer and the literal founding fathers of quantum mechanics, were deeply, profoundly obsessed with a 2,000-year-old Eastern text? Well, welcome to this explainer. Today, we're doing something really cool. We are bridging the ancient, dust-filled battlefields of the Mahabharata directly with the sterile whiteboards of modern quantum physics. Why? To figure out the true nature of the universe. It's a massive, genuinely fascinating topic, and honestly, I am so thrilled to walk you through it today. Let's get right into it.
Here is our roadmap for today. We're going to look at how ancient wisdom meets modern physics, dive into Chapter 10's concept of one in many, explore thermodynamics and the soul, unpack karma as mental entropy, take a look at quantum superposition and entanglement, and finally, wrap it all up with reaching perfect thermal equilibrium.
All right, Section 1. Ancient wisdom meets modern physics.
I know. It sounds like a completely impossible connection, doesn't it? On one hand, you've got this ancient, mystical spirituality, and on the other, super strict mathematical laws. But we're actually going to look at how these seemingly totally opposite worlds combine. We're basically going to use mathematical laws straight from the physics lab as a modern, scientific metaphor to perfectly translate these deeply profound spiritual concepts that were literally spoken on the ancient battlefield of Kurukshetra.
Moving right along to Section 2, Chapter 10, One in Many.
So let's anchor ourselves right in Chapter 10 of the Bhagavad Gita. This chapter explores a really beautiful concept called immanence, or this idea of one in many. And looking at how this maps out Vibhuti Yoga, the philosophical framework establishes something huge. It says the Creator is simultaneously both the material cause and the intelligent cause of the entire universe.
Let me put that into perspective. The crucial point here is that God isn't just the builder of the universe, just standing outside of it like a carpenter building a table. That's not it. According to this teaching, the Creator is the builder, absolutely, but also the very building blocks themselves. It's like being the architect and the bricks at the exact same time.
And there's this brilliant ancient metaphor found in the Upanishads that illustrates this perfectly. Think about a spider. A spider has the intelligence to plan out its web, so that's the intelligent cause, but it also literally uses its own body to produce the silk, which is the material cause. The entire universe comes from one single, imperishable source, exactly like the web comes from the spider.
Another really classic example they use is clay. If you understand a single lump of clay, you essentially understand all objects made of clay, whether it's a tiny little pot or a massive water jug. The changes, they're just shifting names, forms, and functions. The underlying reality, the material itself, remains exactly the same. But here's the big question. How do we actually understand this ancient one-in-many concept using modern scientific metaphors? Well, let's look to physics.
Which brings us to Section 3, thermodynamics and the soul. Let's see how this builds directly into a modern scientific translation. The Gita very boldly states that the ultimate essence of life, the Atman, is entirely indestructible. It doesn't die. It simply discards old bodies to transition into new forms without ever actually ceasing to exist.
And okay, here is where it gets absolutely amazing. Think about burning a log of wood. The energy inside that wood isn't destroyed, it just transforms into heat, light, and ash. The total amount of energy in the universe remains exactly the same. This ancient spiritual concept literally perfectly mirrors the first law of thermodynamics. At our fundamental core, we are just this eternal, constantly shifting energy system. Death is simply a phase transition. That is our first really powerful modern scientific metaphor for understanding this shifting reality.
Okay, Section 4, Karma as mental entropy.
But here's the catch. Energy doesn't just sit there perfectly tidy forever. It degrades. Over in physics, the second law of thermodynamics measures something called entropy, which is essentially just disorder. Think of, say, an unclean teenager's bedroom. Left to its own devices, it just naturally drifts into absolute chaos, right? Well, our minds act the exact same way. They drift toward anxiety and disorder whenever they're bombarded by external desires and worries. This right here is mental entropy in action.
So how do we plug this energy leak? The text gives us nishkama karma, or selfless action. When you're endlessly worrying about an outcome that is completely outside your control, like obsessing over a promotion at work, you're generating massive amounts of mental entropy. You're basically burning through fuel, but getting absolutely zero productive forward movement. It is literally like revving a car engine while it's stuck in neutral. But acting without attachment completely eliminates that internal friction, conserving all your precious inner energy.
Moving to Section 5, Quantum Superposition and Entanglement.
Now we're going to take a huge quantum leap, pun totally intended, and look at something truly wild regarding Chapter 10's core premise of universal oneness. Have you ever heard of the double-slit experiment? Modern physics labs actually performed this and proved that particles, like electrons, can exist in multiple places simultaneously until they are observed. No way, right? But it's true. It's a mind-blowing concept known as quantum superposition. Classical physics says this shouldn't be possible, but it is entirely real.
Now check this out and compare it to the ancient stories. This huge modern scientific discovery perfectly matches the text describing Mother Yashoda looking into Krishna's mouth. When she looks, she sees the divine present in his total fullness in every single atom of the universe, all at the exact same time. It is the ultimate realization of one in many, and just a brilliantly perfect modern metaphor for this ancient truth. And it actually goes even further when we look at quantum entanglement. Albert Einstein famously called this spooky action at a distance. Why? Because deeply connected particles instantly influence each other no matter how physically far apart they are across the universe. Yet the Gita vibrantly recognized this deeply interconnected universal cosmic form thousands of years before the mathematical equations even existed. How cool is that?
Finally, Section 6, Reaching Perfect Thermal Equilibrium.
So if reducing our mental entropy is the ultimate goal, what does a perfectly balanced system actually look like? Well, back in thermodynamics, we have the third law. It states that as temperature approaches absolute zero, entropy hits an absolute minimum, reaching perfect order. This beautifully, seamlessly synthesizes with the spiritual concept of moksha. Because at moksha, all that karmic noise and mental agitation just drop right to zero. You essentially achieve perfect mental thermal equilibrium.
Chapter 10 teaches us to strive for samvatam, or equanimity. Think of this essentially as the daily practice of building yourself into a really high-quality mental thermos.
Because a truly wise person remains completely unshaken. Think about it. If you pour boiling hot coffee into a great thermos, it doesn't matter if there's a literal freezing blizzard going on outside. The inside remains completely stable. At this zero entropy state, the soul returns to pure quantum superposition. It's no longer trapped as this localized, highly stressed particle, but it exists peacefully as an infinite, boundless wave.
So, I'm going to leave you with this provocative thought today. Perhaps mystics sitting in deep meditation and scientists working out incredibly complex math on lab whiteboards aren't actually on opposite sides at all. Maybe, just maybe, they are simply using two completely different vocabularies to describe the exact same magnificent, deeply interconnected universe. So what do you think? Keep exploring, keep questioning everything, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.